Hello, everyone, and welcome to Optimize Weather Storytelling and Workflows in the Cloud. I'm Kathy Haley, co-founder and publisher of TVNewsCheck. Broadcasters are increasingly interested in moving production workflows into the cloud. The coronavirus pandemic and the widespread remote production it has precipitated has accelerated that trend as TV engineers seek to build more flexibility and collaboration into their workflows. We're going to be talking today about weather's move into the cloud and what that means for TV meteorologists, engineers, news directors, and senior management. Before we begin, we're going to launch one of about 3 polls. We want to find out where you are on your journey to the cloud, so feel free to take part in the poll. A little over 3 years ago, and well before the pandemic, the weather company recognized that broadcasters needed a more distributed workforce to accommodate an audience shift. After many years of offering an advanced weather data and visualization platform that operates on premise and requires a hardware investment, the weather company has begun its journey into the cloud. It does so, of course, with help from its parent company, IBM, a global leader in the cloud. The weather company has also recently announced the launch of a new product, MaxCloud. We're going to be talking about this today, all of this, with 2 executives from the weather company, Jerry Martz, Senior Account Executive and Meteorologist, and Bob Millis, Offering Manager for MaxCloud. Jerry works with TV stations and broadcast groups to help them leverage weather company technology across screens to stay relevant to their audience in a changing media environment. He worked as a TV meteorologist for nearly 20 years in Pennsylvania at WTAE-TV Pittsburgh and WBRE Wilkesboro Scranton, and in Ohio at WTOV Steubenville and WSYX Columbus. Bob Millis leads the vision and technical strategy for the Max Weather Solutions, focusing on cloud native, IP video, and AI applications. So I have a lot of questions for Jerry and Bob today, but we're hoping that the audience will ask us questions too. So please feel free to use the Q&A feature on your Zoom screen to ask us questions. Jerry, let me start by asking you about why a TV station group might want to migrate weather workflows and operations into the cloud.
Thanks, Kathy, and good afternoon, everybody, or good morning for some of our West Coast friends. It really comes down to a few things, Kathy. It's obviously the evolution and the rapid acceleration into the cloud last year because of kind of COVID has caused a lot of people and groups to kind of rework things on the fly. And that's one of the things really is a driving behind MaxCloud. A lot of it's about content creation, both for broadcast and digital. TV stations are very busy places and meteorologists are very busy people. It allows meteorologists to share content faster, I would like to say frictionless or with less friction than they can right now. Also opens the idea and to collaborate in ways that they might not have thought of before. Maybe they're thinking of doing it now, but it's too difficult. And it really allows each station and each station within the group that's on MaxCloud to really become more efficient. And the final piece is something that some stations and groups are more aware of painfully than others, that it allows for redundancy and complete disaster recovery. And that's a big topic, especially if you're in the line of fire from some big weather event.
Increasingly, yeah. So if I have a meteorologist who creates terrific graphics around a big weather event, that meteorologist can then share the graphics with colleagues at other stations?
Absolutely, Kathy. We're talking about cloud to ground, not lightning in this case, but we're talking about content, cloud to ground in seconds. If a deep freeze in Texas is a big weather story or a nor'easter, it's very easy for other stations within that group to have immediate access to those graphics with their own look. MaxCloud is designed for drag and drop functionality, all within the Max applications. You're not jumping from program to program or computer to computer. You're at the same interface that you're familiar with, and then it enables that to be done very quickly and easily.
So a meteorologist at one station can share content with colleagues at sister stations. Are there other ways they can kind of share?
Yeah, one of the other ways to think about it is what we refer to as a group locker or group specific locker. And this helps out in a couple different ways. Every station group we know has some expert users with respect to the system knowledge, but also kind of a good combination of a weather and a creative mind. Not everybody, but there are some super users within the group. We know of those folks. So it really enables some of those more gifted storytellers and more creative folks to be able to spread their knowledge. I like to refer to as a rising tide raising all ships. So leveraging that know-how, not just keeping it kind of encapsulated at a station, but spreading it out to the entire group. The other way is that stations, a lot of groups have graphics hubs. The weather company oftentimes helps the stations and the groups create content and distribute the content. But when we refer to that first point about being frictionless or friction-free, it's something that the graphics hub really can do simply now, is create graphics and distribute them to the masses, and also monitor the use of those graphics so nobody kind of goes off the reservation. Everybody kind of stays within the graphics package that corporate's delivered.
Yeah, groups using something collaborative like that, especially so many weather events that are happening now.
Yep.
So a few weeks ago, we were talking, Jerry, about this disruption that happened in the Northeast. There was this ISP provider that had a fiber cable cut. A lot of businesses, a lot of homes were left without power. What would have happened if that disruption had occurred just like the day before a major weather event?
It could have been a huge headache, and that's an understatement. With the connectivity being broken and data being disrupted, not a situation that any station or group wants to find themselves in, and certainly not a situation that a meteorologist wants to find themselves in, when it's their responsibility to deliver critical information out to the public and possibly impact or even save lives. So MaxCloud is designed to adapt to the way that your station group really thinks and works. A lot of times stations can be grouped or regionalized into smaller teams to be more efficient and more resilient. And MaxCloud makes it really easy for stations to organize themselves into those regional work groups. And they can be geographically regional, but they can be whatever makes sense to the stations and to the station group. That allows them to be redundant and to collaborate with each other very, very quickly. And the other thing MaxCloud can do is allow a meteorologist or a user at another station to directly contribute to the content on air and digital at another station that might be in need or find themselves with that particular disruption. So it's kind of a fail-safe and a safety net that we think is really a powerful driver behind MaxCloud.
So we've been also hearing a lot lately about an increased demand, and this is in news departments, for collaboration. I think it's part of the pandemic. I think people are working remotely and they want to be able to collaborate. So it's not just among producers at TV stations, but also among producers at sister stations within a group. So can you share some examples, Jerry, of how the cloud will help meteorologists collaborate more?
Sure. And you do bring up a good point that everybody a lot of people working from home, different resources, different times. It's really kind of forcing that collaboration. And it makes sense for meteorologists maybe to consider collaborating. Just as recent events in Texas, very harrowing weather situation there. The audience gravitates towards local TV during disruptive weather. We know that. And while we don't want to minimize the hardships that those folks are going through, our hearts and our thoughts are still with them. It may be an opportunity. It is an opportunity for stations and groups really to put their best foot forward. And in doing so, they're able to kind of redefine how they handle the situation. If there's an all hands on deck weather situation that can last for hours or days or even longer, a station could be going wall to wall covering weather. Another station that might not even see a flake of snow or a temperature drop below freezing can be producing timely and topical content for that station in need. A Met at a sister station could even join in covering the event as part of kind of an expanded team concept, whether they are in the office or they could be working from home. We know that Max requires a special skill set and that there's a limited bench of people at a TV station that can use that. But imagine if all of a sudden with MaxCloud, your bench of users just expanded to everybody within the station group. That'd be pretty powerful.
Right. And so if you're disconnected from your data on that horrifying day when the ISP, the fiber gets cut, and you have a weather situation like we had, the blizzards, somebody else in your group could actually stand in for you.
Yeah, and there's different levels of that, Kathy. And again, that's kind of different way of thinking from some stations or groups collaborating. Again, whether they're geographically located or they're time zones apart. It doesn't matter with MaxCloud. Another example might be no matter how good of a forecast or how good of planning, I can speak from experience. Unfortunately, there's been situations where a single meteorologist has to cover a severe weather event. Priority one, I got to get on TV. Priority two, it's got to be handled by somebody else. Well, guess what? That's somebody else now that is adding content to your show, producing content for your web and for mobile. That somebody else can be a different meteorologist at a different station that's really helping you out. So even if you didn't have data at a station, you would be able to get fresh content from another sister station that is part of your MaxCloud group.
Aha, okay. Bob, and this is kind of related, remote production is a really important issue right now because of the pandemic. TV engineers are realizing just how much production can be done with a producer or an anchor or a meteorologist working from a location other than the studio. Does MaxCloud facilitate remote production, Bob?
Definitely, Kathy. Yeah, once we put that content securely in the cloud, that's the key to starting that journey to remote production. We've democratized the content. We've made it available intra-group to a whole bunch of stations that are authenticated and cross-connected. And as Jerry pointed out, now you can take that digital content from anywhere with web-based services that we provide with MaxCloud, new Prism Pro, and you can create digital content on a desktop, on tablet, on mobile, wherever you are. Maybe you're in another market and you're helping out for that remote production. You can take care of what needs, the stories that need to get out to those mobile, social, and web right away, and do it from wherever you are. For live shows like Max, where that's a really high value, full production that can go nonlinear and be interactive, you're still going to get to use the cloud, and you can be using a Mac station from another facility, but you're going to go in there and do work. You can supplement what the Mets that are local and doing wall-to-wall coverage are doing, or you can even cover a show for them from wherever you're located, giving them clips to play out or live feeds to go back to the target market. Everything is opened up for the possibilities of remote production when you put that content in the cloud. That's what we've done to start, with so much more to come.
So I just want to, we've got some questions coming in on this very topic. This is a really good one from Dave Bernard. And either Jerry or Bob can answer this. During Hurricane Zeta, we had 100% data failure, no weather data, no live view, etc. Corporate network went down, their backup didn't work, our local backup to the backup failed. Anything like this. The thought with this now is that if we send some Mets out of New Orleans, we could easily access our shows at a sister station. They wouldn't even have to send their Mets out of New Orleans. They could go to a sister station, right? The sister station could
cover for them. Yeah, so all those are possibilities. So I'll take this to start with and see what Jerry says. A couple important things. One, what's up in the cloud can be cached by another station or your local station. So you grab your working set of content that you need, just like you can grab your near-term weather data that's perishable and have that ready. But if things hit you unexpectedly and you're totally down, somebody else can grab that content out of the cloud and go with the weather data they're receiving and run for you.
Okay, interesting. Here is another one. Is weather prediction from weather data part of MaxCloud? That might be a Jerry.
Can you? I wasn't seeing that question, Kathy. Can you say that again, please?
It's somebody snuck it into the chat instead of the Q&A. Is weather prediction from weather data part of MaxCloud?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm not
so
trying.
I can take that. So as an AI component, we have our models and all that in the new graph model that's come out. But no, MaxCloud right now, although it could in the future, doesn't really have an AI predictive component to it. But we are investing in all new models like our new graph model that gets you more accurate look at what's about to happen with high resolution.
All right. So we're getting more into stuff about MaxCloud. So I want to ask Jerry about MaxCloud. Weather company recently announced it as a new solution. When will it be available to TV stations?
Yeah, they're
Yeah,
getting ahead of us here.
all right. That's all
How
right.
do you do that?
It's available now as a
Yeah.
field trial, and it includes the ability initially for stations to cover each other and share some content. And also, as Bob mentioned, that Prism Pro, that kind of new experience for publishing digital content, kind of web-based. Well, then in the next iteration, as we go through really the first half of 2021, we're going to be opening up to more regional work groups and more distributed content. And finally, full disaster and flexibility by really thinking by the third quarter of this year. So there's a lot of other things. Bob can mention a couple other details in there, but it's a process, and what we're looking at right now is the ability to try and get some stations and some groups on board with us early. Because we're still pivoting. I don't want to speak for Bob on respect to the product, but we're early enough in the process that we want some real-time feedback. So we're anxious. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, it does go full GA soon, but we love those field trial participants. Absolutely.
Right. And so, Bob, the meteorologists watching are probably wondering, is my life going to change when we do this? Do you want to show us a little bit about what they're going to experience?
Sure, absolutely, Kathy. Give me just a second here to clear a couple things off my screen here, and we'll go for that.
I'll just add while Bob's getting his screen ready is that we do believe that the meteorologist lives and other station folks are going to change, but for the better. And you may be thinking about ways you want to do things now, but they might be difficult or cumbersome or not possible in your current environment. But hopefully MaxCloud kind of opens the aperture, or opens your eyes up to some new and better ways of doing things.
All right, so if people can see my screen, let's get started here. The Max is what you know of. Now, the difference here with Max is now that we put your content in the cloud, we do have to go a little bit of authentication, not all the time, not when you're in severe weather. We'll keep you going when you're running Max and you're doing your job. Let's say when you start your shift in the morning or hand off to somebody else, we'll ask you to go log in to identify who you are, make sure we should be in there. Now, look at that list of lockers. In this case, we have a station group inside of ourselves where we've got KALE and some other stations like KBBB. When you know Max, you're going to go into a workspace. That's the way you start everything. And we try to keep as much of Max as the same as possible. So let's say I needed to go to another station today, start caching content from that one and grab my workspace there. Fine, I can do that. And when I do it, it's the same Max experience that you know of and your meteorologists are familiar with every day. This is the 7X new user experience, easier to get to things. Looking in the upper right-hand corner, though, we constantly do remind you who you're logged in as and what station you're logging in, what locker you're going after. Okay, so you look at it, that's the content library that you're going to see. That's where your workspaces are and the hits you're looking at. So as you do your business, pretty much everything else now is going to be very similar to that, other than whom I logged in as. I'm looking at my hits, stuff gets cached up for me. But if you look there, when you're looking in the content library, you see some new icons there in the content library. Check for items that are downloaded and ready for you to use, and other things very similar to a mobile experience where you see a little cloud icon with an encouragement to download. Maybe you have an older version of that Max Sky scene. That's fine. But we want you to update to the newest one that's in the cloud so you can go grab that anytime you want. If you think you're going to go nonlinear or bring that into your show, go bring those in because somebody in another market could have updated them and they're newer on the cloud. But go do what you want to do, switch lockers if you want. If you have a flood explainer, let's say that was in another locker, you were grabbing from somebody else, and we said it was cloud to ground in seconds, you just drag and drop that. And when you drag and drop it from the cloud, wherever it is, you can either get it by reference with all its dependencies or pull a full version of it into your own locker. It's there for you, ready to use. So that explainer that somebody else created and put hours of work in, you got to grab it in seconds and you never left the Max user experience when you did it. Likewise, if you wanted to share something that you created, it's as easy to do it in the other direction. You want to save something, you're going to get both your own shared folder and you can organize it the way you want and save it out. So people don't have to be directly in your content library. They can just have a copy of what it is and you can save that out. And lo and behold, it's as easy as that to offer up content for somebody else and let them know it's available.
And so, Bob, how does this make it easier to update a meteorologist's web and mobile forecast too?
Absolutely, Kathy. So we also have this Prism Pro product, and we've reimagined the entire digital content publishing experience. And in so doing, we went straight to the web and did it a web-based service. And now all our eventing is in the cloud, all our control is in the cloud, scheduling and talking to a distributed group of appliances that we formed into a hybrid cloud environment. So those appliances that you always had to do the digital content publishing and you still have life at your station, we're going to use them for a while. They're more cost effective than rendering directly from the cloud, but we can connect them in a distributed network, a regional work group that Jerry talked about before, that you're all connected together within the station group and you cover each other and give yourself redundancy, but you're all interacting with it as a web-based experience. And this is live here. This is on our production. You can do something and say, I want to render a piece of content now and send it out to get rendered right now. You can go edit this task and change when it's going to fire and what it's going to trigger off of. It's all an easy web-based experience. Of course, we all have to have our spinning wheel here, right? So you can see it's wizard-based. It's easy. There's a piece of content there. It'll guide you through what to do. You don't have to be a Prism geek, a subject matter expert on our old UI that was very functional, but not very intuitive. And whether you're an engaged customer or a regular Max Prism customer or any of our other offerings, it'll all be based on the same technology. You set when you want to trigger it, where you want to send it, do you want to send it to different endpoints? And in the end of the day, you can do this from a tablet. You can do this on the go on a handheld to a limited experience at your desktop, wherever you are. You just authenticate and get in. If you're doing this from your Mac's workstation, you click over to it. You've already logged in on your Mac, so it'll just take you right where you need to go. Simple web-based UI. They can do digital content publishing on the fly, wherever they are. Do it in another locker. Do it for another market if you need to. Somebody else that you're connected to and authorized to help out. Full flexibility, and it's just the start of where we're going to go with remote production.
All right. Thank you, Bob. This is either for Bob or Jerry. When TV engineers talk about moving workflows into the cloud, they often mention that it will eventually mean that the technology they're using will take up less space on-prem. What does that mean for Max weather systems?
Well, how about if I take that one to start?
Sure.
Yeah. So today, that redundant footprint that our customers are used to is having two core servers that do everything from the data serving to the weather data ingest and all those backbone functions that make the entire ecosystem go. Those go to the cloud later this year. Along with that, the distributed hybrid work group that we have, you have the core servers, you have your Max workstations that you do your rendering and live play to air, forecasting, show prep. You have those, and you have those Prism appliances that we talked about. So the Prism appliances can get connected into a distributed group of them, working redundantly together for faster throughput. So you'll need less of them. So you can start aging them out and not replacing them when it makes sense. The core servers that do those weather data ingest and all that content serving functions, they go to the cloud. And now what you're left with in the near term are the Max workstations locally caching both the perishable weather data and caching the digital content from whichever locker to create the new look and shows for whatever you want to do. Those are going to be at the edge for a while. Now, as time goes by and you get more comfortable with cross-site collaborative workflows, then you can probably thin up even those systems. But whether you're talking about on Macs, whether it's 3D reality, advanced graphics with augmented reality, or just the regular 2D show going nonlinear and interactivity, those are going to stay at the edge for a while, because for the lowest latency, for the highest performance, we're going to use them, but we're connecting them via the cloud. But those cores go away, the number of Prism appliances reduce. We're really leaning out the footprint at the edge, but still giving you that kind of reliability that you need to, in case you even have disruptions on the internet. You cached a lot of content, you have your weather data, you can still deliver a signal out right from that station location.
So we have some nice questions coming in from the audience about some of the stuff we're talking about. Here's one. Other than sharing creation, what benefit is there for output? Can you stream graphics directly from the cloud? How do you control playback of those cues? And can you send proxy to a weather person who is doing a live remote? Ooh.
Well, yeah, some people are really forward thinking, and eventually for remote production, we want to get there, but we're not starting at remote production with proxies and direct play out of real-time video 60 frames per second from the cloud. We will move in stages. We've democratized the content. We're moving away those core functions, and then we will go to offline content creation from the cloud, which will be a bit of a consumption model. Maybe rendering is kind of costly there, and we will move. We have other ideas and other things we're going to build on MaxCloud. They're going to be lightweight production directly from the cloud, but those really interactive, low latency, advanced shows that you're using from Macs today, those are going to stay at the edge for a while, and they will in time move to have options for moving them to the cloud. But the Macs that you know of, that real-time live production is going to stay at the edge for a while.
Here's another kind of techie question, Bob. Is MaxCloud integrated with SAML 2.0 authentication?
Absolutely, yes. SAML authentication, OAuth 2 workflows. So what we're basically saying is here, when you start with it, you can start with our authentication, but we are absolutely going to federate to whatever your enterprise single sign-on is. If you even need multi-factor authentication, we can do that. Yes, we were not going to make you remember a lot of different authentication schemes and passwords. Absolutely.
Here's another one. Does the cloud system integrate into MOS-driven graphics workflow?
Right, not at this time, because the content is bespoke to us. It's our scenes, our workspaces, our show elements. It's in our language. But I always keep my eye on the ball when it comes to things like MOS. So let's keep that conversation going. I am sure we will get there with MOS.
All right, good. Jerry, Bob mentioned hybrid cloud, big topic right now in technology circles. Can you talk a little bit more about your hybrid cloud strategy for MaxCloud?
Sure, and Bob had mentioned that too, is keeping a couple boxes at the edge. And maybe for some of those folks not really familiar with that, that simply means it's still on-prem. It's connected to the other elements that are purely cloud-based. So a hybrid cloud model is a little bit of both. And the reason for that in part is because a lot of the stations have invested in these high horsepower, high end Max workstations. And there's something that they're probably not, I'm assuming, just not going to push aside for the sake of technology. They've got to amortize them out over a period of time. And also, to Bob's point, we started with what we felt would be the laying a solid foundation with content sharing and collaboration. And ultimately, the eye is on the goal, as he mentioned, to be able to produce that level of video output and content creation and collaboration from the cloud, but we're going to get there. So the hybrid cloud, really, when you think about it with respect to MaxCloud, a little bit on-prem, still a little bit of a regional work group or a farm with the prisms that you have today, and the cores ultimately will be going away to the cloud. So that's what terms of hybrid means in the MaxCloud environment.
And Michael Barron is asking, if my Prism box goes down, I can be backed up by another station's or group of stations' hardware.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep.
right. And
That's what we mean. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, that's the first part that's moving into the cloud, right? Prism is sort of shifting to the cloud in a way.
The control of it is in the cloud, the content is in the cloud, and creating a regional work group of who you want to cover for you and have access to everything from your earth insets, your unique look, and make sure we all have access to the right data, including that local data, and they would cover for you. And yes, if your Prism goes down, you wouldn't miss a beat. They would deliver for you. They would render, encode, and distribute right for you.
Yep.
Here's our lockers that are created in the cloud, replicated to the local on-prem system. So if the cloud is lost, all content is still available.
While you still have your local cores, that's exactly what we do. We reflect a copy back. Over time, I think we'll all get confidence from the cloud, and you will always have some amount of your working custom content cached locally, the working set, but you wouldn't necessarily have everything. That wouldn't be an efficient use of space. But we have the capability at all times. If you wanted to have a local backup to a NAS or some other local storage, that's your freedom. You're welcome to reflect everything that's in your cloud locker back to some storage place. But there's always going to be some of it cached, and right now 100% of it will automatically be reflected back when we have those cores still in play, because why not?
Yeah. Here's another one from Dave Bernard. Does IBM have a plan or ability to keep data moving if there's an outage on your end, like the Amazon one last year? Or is this not feasible? Like a backup cloud?
Well, sure, we're going to be multi-region. We're multi-zone within one region, and we're going to try to do everything we can for availability. Now, that being said, we're going to sharpen up our any rough edges we have, and whatever weather data that you've already cached locally, whatever models runs that you've gotten, whatever content that you have for observed and forecasted data that are local, you still get access to them. If we have any rough edges about that, we'll smooth them out. So you get the data that you get. If you lost your connectivity to your ISP for a while, sure, you're not going to get data for a little while. You're going to have what you have cached for content, but we'll have you covered. And as far as on the back end for our solution, it is absolutely multi-region and multi-zone within a region for high availability.
Yeah. Let me ask another question, Bob. Do you have any clients on MaxCloud already?
Yes, we have some that have been tremendous field trial partners. We haven't gone to our 1.0 official release yet and cut the official GA version, but we're close to that. But yes, we have them doing cross-site collaboration, content sharing, and doing the Prism workflows right from the web-based UIs. And so we're really excited about it. We're just looking to get more field trial customers. We can't get enough of those people. Everybody's network is a little different. Everybody's workflows are a little different. So we just love the wider exposure. Max has always been that kind of complex product that really benefits from a healthy beta program, and we're in that right now.
Okay, here's a less techie question, maybe Jerry. How would you broadcast this to an on-air product, or is this simply for web, mobile, social?
So when we're talking, Bob and I try to make the distinction, we're talking about digital, we're talking about digital as we might think of it with respect to web, with mobile and social. We're talking about broadcast, we're kind of keeping in those swim lanes, but we're talking about content. It can be content generated for both. So it's easy to connect the dots, I think, when we're talking about digital content that would be coming from this new Prism experience. One station backing up another, stations or groups collaborating for their Prism content. You could be very focused and very, I said, timely and topical, which is borrowed from a wise news director some years ago, but that resonates in the fact that if you need to ramp up your coverage, if you're in that South Central Plains storm, you may be 110% all hands on deck with all of your people and your equipment, whereas somebody else might be using their equipment as they do every day on a limited basis. They can ramp up their digital production and content for you because you're hitting your limit. So that's the digital side. For broadcast side, I think we illustrated a couple of different ways when it really comes into play. If you're at a TV station, you could easily create broadcast ready content for another station. And by the ways that Bob showed, the drag and drop functionality from those scenes, that's very easy to do. So if somebody, and it's not that much of a stretch, I don't think, if you're doing wall-to-wall coverage, even if there's 2 meteorologists and you're on wall-to-wall, if you're covering that event, somebody else at a sister station or stations could be creating content for you and placing it in the locker, and it will be available to you on your Max station ready for broadcast. So that's available to you to use at a moment's notice. The other side of it from a disaster recovery point, I think, and Bob, please keep me in line here, is that if your station went down or you were in trouble and you couldn't do anything, you were handcuffed for a variety of reasons, another station would already have access to your look and your content and your data. They'd be able to step in a moment's notice, then broadcast as if they were you. They would be able to do that very quickly. So I think it does open up the possibilities, that ways that station could collaborate for digital and for broadcast.
Yep. So I wanted to just put a fine point on what Jerry said. We'll let you make content out and record it, and that is a little bit old school, since we're not originating content directly from the cloud and playing out live from the cloud. So then if you're playing out from your Max box in that other market, like Jerry said, whether you're using TVU networks or other infrastructure, the station would get it cross market to where it needs to go. We're working on some other IP technologies. There's a lot of other things we have in the hopper that we're working on, but at the end of the day, routing between stations with the live content for getting live feeds back, that would be something we'd look outside the Max ecosystem for now.
Another question, how will MaxCloud deal with KML-driven graphics?
Same as it ever did. You have the ability to bring in KML and KMZ files, and nothing changes except what you bring into your content library now goes into a locker in the cloud and is available for anyone to see it. But no change for KML. Max was already doing that. We just elevate everything to the cloud and make it accessible by all.
Okay. This is another one for Bob, I think. Any estimate of additional bandwidth needed by the cloud implementation to properly cache from the lockers, et cetera?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like, they've all been great questions.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. There are peaks of time. We're going to onboard all your content to the cloud. In the general sense, a very modest amount of upload bandwidth, upload stuff in the background, nothing really much to speak of. I mean, we have little bursts of time where we upload content. Download, we are getting our weather data from the cloud. A lot of it's data from cloud already. So we'll tell people that on average, if you had an extra 100K bits per second around that we could pull on, that'd be fine. If it was a little bit less, we may give you a spinning wheel a little further and spin. If you're going to pull down and start your new setup, just getting a box on cloud, and you got to pull GIS and you got to pull some other big files, it'd be helpful if you had a richer download bandwidth for a short time to get ready. That's the scenario where, for example, you take a Max 3 or 4 at station 1, and then you want to become station number 2 and you haven't cached their content in a while, you're going to pull a lot to update your local cache for that other station. So if you had more bandwidth, it'll go quicker. If you have less bandwidth, we'll ease into it. It's fine either way. If you had an extra 100K download bandwidth that we could pull on demand, that would probably make things go a lot smoother. We can work with less though.
Great. Here's another question. Is this simply a porting of existing Max software to a cloud instance? Or is this a proper containerized implementation of Max in the cloud?
Yes. Well, so that whole Prism Pro is a new set of microservices directly in the cloud that's cloud native, reimagined from the ground up, talking to a new renderer at the edge. All the digital media, democratizing the content, new cloud services. There's no lift and shift here. Along the whole journey that we go on together with MaxCloud, there will be times when an occasional microservice, it makes sense to do a lift first and then make it more cloud native. So if you ask me across the whole thing, it's majority new microservices, all on IBM Cloud, all SaaS, all highly reliable and secure. We're making it cloud native at the start. Occasionally we find a stepping stone where we want to do a little lift and shift and then move, right? But mostly it's all new microservices, cloud native.
Bob, we're getting a lot of technical questions here.
Yeah, we
Very
are.
good. Good. Engineers are watching. We own multiple local core / Max configuration and some Cirrus configuration. The only reason we have some physical core are because of a requirement or a physical PC or for a storm. On our next refresh of all aging computers, can we migrate to a virtual core for all of our site?
Yes, if you have the right workstations at the edge, because there's some services that like streaming radar and stuff like that, that it makes sense, and some local data ingest things that should happen at the edge and then feed up to the cloud. If you have the right workstations around it, the newer generation of workstations that will also become IP capable, then yes, your cores, this is the whole point of going to MaxCloud. Those general compute functions that we're going to containerize and virtualize and reimagine in new microservices, they're all going to the cloud. We don't want to be in the business of providing cores long-term for you or ask you to make virtual machines or anything like that. Exactly.
Okay. Bob, if you're going to a consumption model, will broadcasters be able to leverage existing agreements with cloud providers?
So right now, I know I use that word consumption model for a future hint of where we would go with cloud-based rendering. This is a SaaS service. It's offered on IBM Cloud. And it's going to be a flat fixed price for this whole offering for things that have to do with content, collaboration, digital content publishing, hybrid cloud. It's all fixed. It's not going to be a consumption model. When we all get together and look at where the world is about a year from now and are ready to pull the trigger on cloud-based rendering to go with it, that one may have an extra component that's consumption based. Separately, I want to respect what this person asked for a question. IBM, its vision is multi-cloud. We have Red Hat OpenShift. We have a vision for going to different places to not just be on IBM Cloud. We think IBM Cloud is the most secure, the most versatile cloud that's there, but we will be looking at shifting some of these technologies to a more open hybrid approach that is multi-cloud, but that's over time. Right now, it's going to be a fixed price offering that today's MaxCloud, and it's a SaaS service offered on IBM Cloud.
Will there be any change to CSV-driven graphics or data?
No, it's a great question too. Now, when it comes to that local data ingest, nav data and CSV data, and it's imported, nav imported data, any of that stuff can go via other workflows that are outside of Max. We will not ask you to do anything different with whatever you do today. And that stuff will get moved over and rise up immediately to the cloud to trigger, say, digital content publishing or work with Max. Anything that comes in locally outside of the Max ecosystem can be targeted for eventing, triggering, rise to the cloud, availability for other stations. So no change there. It's another good observation from someone that clearly knows the technology.
Yeah, people are really exploring this. They're ready to move and learn about this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one from Eric Godin, another high-tech question. We test the ability to work SDI quality signal from VMs in the Azure or Amazon cloud to our station. And this was working just fine using high vision SRT transmission protocol. Will this be feasible to have everything in your cloud and receive this broadcast quality signal in our station if our network is okay?
Well, it's not part of the initial version of MaxCloud. The full real-time rendering of a video with interactivity and all that thing within the Max is going to stay at the edge for now, as we talked about. There are a lot of great technologies, and we will look at how we containerize the Max set of applications and how we work with rendering in the cloud and low latency delivery from IP sources. I promise you, this is all the things that me and my leadership and everybody we talk about with sales every day. We're going to get there, but not right now, not as kind of a proof of concept product in Amazon or Azure, where they're doing generic things. Maybe, I mean, we know we can do play out from the cloud right now, right? But the kind of advanced graphic with so many different layers, interactivity, telestration, going nonlinear, AI driven or augmented reality driven things, excuse me. There's so much that goes into putting a Max show together, especially if you're in severe weather coverage, that for now, that's going to stay at the edge on that bare metal, and it will move over time. But we want to do it right. Somebody that said earlier about, are we just doing a lift and shift? If we rushed that aspect to the cloud, it would be more of a lift and shift than a reimagining of the technology, a redoing of the containers and the pieces that make up the Max play to air and the Max show authoring. We want to do it right. So we're going to take a little more time on that.
Here's a good question. This might be for Jerry. What about existing licenses? We've already bought licenses for on-prem, and SaaS is a very different business model.
Good question. I think that when we're talking about the initial investments that a lot of stations and groups made, a lot of them had made the capital investments in software and the hardware and the training, and you're going to be able to leverage those. That's the plan, at least moving forward, that I'm aware of. When we're talking about really introducing a new technology, even though we've used some of these words interchangeably, like Prism functionality or core, that those the level of collaboration and the sharing and the disaster recovery, and then ultimately where we're going, really is a different animal. And we understand there's a difference between capitalized or project cost and operational or services or SaaS. And we're very cognizant of that and very much aware of that, which is part of the reason too why we're not rushing and haven't rushed into, as Bob mentioned, being able to do the Max play out and the rendering from the cloud, because there's a lot of stations that have invested, rightfully so, in a lot of components and appliances at their location. So we're going to use them and allow them to get the maximum amount of use out of those appliances and gradually push them to the edge until a point they can consolidate, or they might not be needed anymore. But with respect to software licensing and everything else that the station has already paid for, you get to keep that. That's yours as long as you're a Max customer.
Okay, great. Will this eventually lead to a Max app that would be usable via remote locations, that would be more robust than the current Max Connect? For remote. Does anybody?
Yeah, so I can take that, Kathy. So separating out, so absolutely, that kind of mobile directing of your show kind of experience, we still have that Connect product, and that is viable. While we're not going to we're going to keep investing in Connect, and we're not going to try to compete with, say, the remote desktops and all those different type of technologies. We are clearly looking at the vision of web-based remote production. So you can betcha that that's the way we're going to go, where we're going to be guiding what we do from new web-based UIs and microservices. We're going to go there for sure.
Possibly another Bob question from Paul Krabeth. How is the MaxCloud output taken to air? Is there still a computer with an SDI output at the station?
Yes, like Jerry said, the stations have a lot of investment in those high-end workstations at the edge. They can be tied into local routers. There's a lot of different things. They're central to your stations. We're going to leverage that. This is part of our hybrid cloud vision. Use the high-end GPU and that SDI IO that you have, migrate to IP and other things like that. But remember, just like the data from cloud for the weather data, you're pulling from the lockers, you're caching locally everything that you need to, icons and backgrounds and windshield layers and animations and everything. And you pull it down locally in wherever box you're going to play it out of, and you're going to render it at that station location, even if it's not your home station that you would normally play it out from.
All right, thank you, Bob. Jerry, I want to make sure I ask you to sum up how MaxCloud is going to change things or benefit the different people invested in this technology, like chief engineers, general managers, meteorologists, news directors. How does it change life for these people?
Hopefully for the better. That's the idea, right, Kathy? Is to make it better, and I think the underlying or the foundational word there is really efficiency and driving efficiencies. But when you do that, it does open up, we hope, the minds of news managers, news directors, general managers at stations, and even station leaders, station group leadership to think about how they can do things differently. Stations oftentimes are somewhat on an island, even with respect to sister stations that might be in the same state. It doesn't have to be like that with MaxCloud. You've got a huge team of users. So from a chief engineer standpoint, it's very practical, right? There's less hardware to maintain. There's, worry about security. It's on MaxCloud, on the IBM cloud. General manager would see, capital project cost savings, a smaller hardware footprint. You would have some much more flexibility for a general manager, really a news director, probably making the schedules for someone that unfortunately might come down ill suddenly or might be out on an extended leave. You would be able to leverage the other stations within the group that have MaxCloud to be able to fill those gaps without having to overwork the staff that you already have. And I'm smiling because all the meteorologists out there are probably like, yes, no more 14-day stretches. But I do mean that seriously. It does really allow for some different ideas. And for news directors, think about much more flexibility in the way that they're covering weather events. Whether they're a man or a woman or a meteorologist down at a station, maybe they need to expand from a single person coverage, or maybe a weekend needs some support. Maybe people are on vacation. It does allow for much more flexibility. And finally, for the meteorologist, what we're really trying to do is to keep your experience as close to what you're used to right now. You don't have to learn new user interfaces. You don't have to learn new programs. It's drag and drop. But we're hopefully the meteorologists that joined today can think of, and I'm sure they are, a bunch of smart folks out there that are thinking of ways that this is really going to be great. And they could take these ideas to the news directors and general managers and chief engineers and their peers. And have you thought about this? Can we do that? Can we be doing this? What if this happens? All those things they can put onto a big whiteboard and really think of new ways that MaxCloud can help them. So hopefully we picked up a couple of the points there, but we really do think that it helps everybody at the station.
I really like the idea of the regional work groups because you could have the fire season, which is very long. Sure. On the West Coast now, you could have people collaborating and doing like group, you could almost do a special on it. You could do special sections.
And it's not my decision or anybody on our team's decision to dictate what a station does or what their brand is, but we're simply saying that it does allow for some flexibility. And whether you're talking about a short-term weather event, maybe it's one day, or maybe a little bit of coverage, or maybe a collaboration, or think about the length of time that people are being impacted in Texas. And when is it going to get above freezing? What are the winds going to do for a fire situation? How bad is the flooding going to be in a prolonged, tropical event? You're talking about a considerable amount of stress on everybody at that particular station that's covering it. Real stress. They've got their families to worry about too, let alone be on the air for 12 or 14 or 24 hours. Just think about the help that could come in from another station within that group to really be able to lift them up. And I think if you look at it from the 10,000 foot view, the 100,000 foot view, that you could see how the benefits, might not be exactly $1.01 trade-off, but you're really able to help each other within the group.
Great. Couple more questions here. They keep coming in. Jerry, where can they see this concept in use today? You probably can't tell them.
I'll let Bob have that one.
Well, I'll tell you what, we want your information. We've got our own internal demos with sales engineering gear, and we mock ourselves up and we operate like a station every day. So while we can't invite you into other beta customers' backyard and share their lockers with you, we can show you it in action any day you want. Yep. On the regular Max hardware, running a version of 7.3 software with just the additions for MaxCloud over the top. It's a simple thing.
And I can tell you just behind the scenes, I know one of the customers that's already POCing this or on with it. And I know they're very advanced in their workflows because we featured them in our webinars, in their production and their remote production workflows. One more question. Will MaxCloud let me move products between stations not traditionally able to be moved, such as hit windshields or alert templates? Bob.
Digital, all the custom content that you need for putting on any kind of show element will be available for other markets. The only thing we have to normalize on is if you're a market that has our sky or wind particles or something like that, and somebody else wants to cover for you. That's where we talk about regional groups and connecting them. There are certain things that may be unique to what you pay for in your Max ecosystem, and we'd have to normalize. So when it comes to feature-driven product, if somebody else is going to cover for you and play your content, they have to have the same data packages and some of the same features. But when it comes to all of the custom content that you make, windshield layers, backgrounds, everything else, alert templates, yes, they get access to them, full stop, if they're connected to you. By the way, I just want to clarify that if a whole station group would sign on, everybody doesn't become an automatic interconnected web. You choose how you would organize your regional work groups. You choose whether you want to group these stations together, whether they're locally grouped, or whether you want somebody that's in a different time zone to be connected and backing somebody else up, whatever you want. If there's another high-end market that you kind of want them to, they'll do some sharing, but they want to keep at arm's length and people don't get into my content library unless I ask you to, it's fine too. You can do peer-to-peer sharing, group sharing, and take the benefits of MaxCloud at that level, but not think that everybody from every other station in the groups is going to go tiptoeing through my locker. It's only by invitation only, okay?
Yeah.
That's important. Unless Jerry has any concluding remarks, we're about talked out, I think. The audience has asked their questions, so I can conclude. We're very close to being out of time. I want to thank the weather company's Jerry Martz, Senior Account Executive and Meteorologist, and Bob Millis, Offering Manager for MaxCloud. I'll be back here April 27th with the weather company when we will be talking about the possibilities for subscription revenue on mobile weather platforms. We'll be sending you an email about that since you've been so kind to be on this webinar. I want to thank you again for attending, and we'll conclude the webinar. Thanks again, Bob and Jerry. It's great to see you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody.